Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Why?
Alrighty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Reverend Whitney based in Bond. I serve as the program coordinator for the Wisdom Center, which is housed inside of Bessie Strong. And Wisdom is an acronym for Women in Spiritual Discernment of Ministry. We look at ministry very broadly. What is your life's purpose? What have you been sent here to do? I'm class of 2008, which at one point used to be Spelman's largest incoming class, but one of these classes took our spot. I don't know who, but somebody took our spot. But I'm super excited about this conversation that I will be having along with Nyla and Shadavia. I will first ask the president of Afrekete, Anna, to hop on right quick for a quick housekeeping, and then we will do formal introductions and go ahead and get started with our conversation tonight. Anna?
Hi, Reverend Brian. Thank you so much. Hi, y'all. Just a couple of things. Afrekete is voting to, or is in the running to be the best RSO. So we do need you guys' support in filling out this quick little form that I'm going to send in the group chat. Additionally, if you're not in our group me, which I'll also send in the chat, the link can be found there as well. So please go ahead, join our group me, and please go ahead, fill out that form. It really doesn't take, but like a couple of seconds. So other than that, it's off to you, Reverend Bond. Thank you.
I'm acting like somebody's auntie. I know that I was muted. I apologize. Okay, my bad. First, before we get started, we want to go over just a few covenantal things. Our conversation is being recorded to share with the Blue. Nyla, please don't let me get it wrong again.
Blue Record.
Blue Record Podcast. I keep wanting to call it Blue Note, which is another event that Spelman used to do. Blue Record Podcast, we'll be using it later. We ask that you don't share any screen grabs from this conversation unless permission has been given by myself, Shadavia, or Nyla, if it's like a direct quote that you would like to use. We ask that anything that is shared in this conversation stay within this kind of virtual digital space. I know that there isn't a guaranteed way that we can confirm that people will lend to the safe and brave space that we are offering tonight. But we do ask that whatever is discussed tonight, if it's not public information, that you don't go around sharing people's stories with others that if they're not in community with them. I've already done my introduction, and so now I will have Nyla introduce herself.
Thank you so much. As you guys can see and probably hear, my name is Nyla Cohen. Quick little spelly intro. I am class of 2026, comparative women's studies major with a minor in entrepreneurship and innovation. And I'm also on the e-board for Afrekete as the outreach chair and spearheader of this event. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. I'm going to let you go ahead, Day Day.
Hey y'all, I'm Day and or Shadavia Burnett. Quick also Spelman intro. I'm a religious studies major, graduating senior. Yes, and I'm also in Sisters Chapel. I am the lead of We Speak Up CA and a former wisdom scholar.
Thank you all so much. First, Nyla, would you like to give us a quick little intro about how this conversation came to be tonight?
Yes, I would absolutely love to. Okay, guys. So, me and Anna, also one of the co-presidents of Afrekete, are actually really good friends. We've been friends since our freshman year. And when I got on the e-board this year, they asked us kind of events that we had in mind or just kind of brainstorming. And I had just brought up the idea of maybe doing something and partnering with Sisters Chapel to kind of discuss the narrative and elephant of the room kind of topic about the religious community and the LGBTQIA community and the kind of problems with that. It was really just kind of like an idea. Like, I wasn't like, okay, this is what it's gonna be, this is what we're gonna do. It was nothing too crazy. I was like, I think that that would be pretty good. And Anna was like, oh yeah, we're doing that. Like, we're gonna do that. Like, we're gonna make that happen. And even when she said it, like, I knew she was being serious, but I guess I didn't think that it was like that ingrained. And she told me to email Dean Guidry and Reverend Bond to go ahead and see if we can actually do it. And I was like, they were, of course, more than open to do it. So I was like very excited to see this. And now we're here. I mean, we're on Zoom and we're actually going to talk about it today. So I'm if you see me smiling the whole time, I'm genuinely so happy to be here. Like, so actually, so that's kind of how that ended up happening.
Thank you so much, Nyla. And so that will be our starting point for our conversation tonight. When I came to Spelman in August of 2004, which was legit 20 years ago, the person that I am now, I didn't even know that she was possible. I grew up in very religious settings. My maternal side of the family is National and American Baptist. I went to Catholic school from first to eighth grade. Even though the Catholic school was a very Black school, it was still Catholicism. And then my high school was affiliated with the evangelical movement. Then I got to Spelman and I was just like, wait, what do I do? Like, I can take off running. Like, if we got to do the Kojic Pentecostal thing, I can do that too. Or if we want to sit still and be contemplative, I can do that too. And I can also play a main tambourine. But I also knew that there wasn't space for me to be my full self, even as a sexual being. I know that I am cis presenting, but those who know me know that I got a wife and I've had a wife for a long time. And some people were like, but how did you get there? While I didn't really embrace my sexuality while I was in college, I did find pockets of space that allowed me to share with people kind of one on one. And I always remember being like, oh, they're so brave for being an Afrekete. Like, they can just live their lives and nobody cares. They're just so free. And so to be in conversation with a representative from Afrekete literally 20 years later, my heart is just like, it's on slow. And in the words of Dean Guidry, no time is wasted in God's economy. Like, when we are staying focused on the assignment, like, all things that we want to happen, to flourish, they come to fruition in some aspect. We just have to give up trying to figure out when. And so I say all of that to say, I am more than happy, grateful to have this conversation because, like I said, in 2004, until I left as a student, this was not being had on a public platform. Let alone we didn't even have Zoom, but nobody was even having these kind of conversations in a front-facing way with students, staff, to just talk about, how do we bridge something that is innate for people of color, especially Black people. Like, faith, religion is indigenous to who we are as a people. It's how we still have generations of people, because our ancestors, our elders had a spiritual wisdom that they were able to tap into as a tool of survival. So Nyla or Day, would one of you like to tell us a little bit about your spiritual or religious background, your family structure, and how that has shaped you to who you are today?
Yeah, I can start us off. So I'm a PK. My dad's a preacher. I've grown up very conservative Christian, very, this is what the Bible says, grandma's religion, great grandma's religion, the pastor's religion, the deacons, the ushers, like, it was very much like very tight knit, not missing a Sunday. I was singing in church, the opening hymn. I was praise dancing to Marvin Sapp. Like, I was very much in church. That was what I grew up on. And so just coming from that, it's kind of like how we learn about in ADW, like the banking system, and just regurgitating what you know and not asking questions and almost like just following blindly. That's what I came from up until I was a freshman, truly up until I was a sophomore. That's what I had, and that's the structure that carried me through my 17 years of life. I didn't know that there was any other way. I didn't know that what I was feeling, and what I knew to be true could manifest itself in a very authentic way. I was told to suppress it, and almost like not acknowledge it at all. And if you did acknowledge it, it was anything that was outside of quote unquote the Bible and how I was taught, prayed away. Just get on your knees, pray, say the Lord's Prayer, and don't act into it. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Leave that alone. And so coming from that, it was a very, very toxic, very very much in internalized homophobia, is what I lived in and for 17 years, coming from that. So that's my structure. That's my structural background. Yeah.
I want to apologize in advance if there's noise in the background. I'm outside, but I grew up in the church as well. I grew up praise dancing. I grew up dancing, period. My grandma danced, my mom danced. So to this day, I grew up dancing all kinds of dance. And my grandmother, she was like the praise dance coach for the church I went to. We have an Ebenezer Baptist church back home, so that's where I was going, and I was dancing every Sunday, performing, miming, like going to Sunday school. Like you said, it was very like it was no joke. Like we weren't missing anything. This is the way we do things. My parents are very Christian. All my grandparents, everybody in my family for the most part is very Christian. So I actually want to second that feeling of really not knowing kind of where your sexuality and who you are as a sexual being once you start to kind of get in that phase. I know a lot of LGBTQIA people, like they're like, oh, I knew from, when I didn't have that experience. I kind of figured it out along the way getting into middle school. And I remember having these feelings and just being confused in the sense that like this like can't be. Like this is not right. Like whatever this is, like it's probably just something in the back of my head, just very in denial about it. And then even like having the opportunity to speak up about it and be like, oh no, like I'm straight. Like that's it. Like, but knowing, speaking to other people that was not the truth, and knowing to myself that wasn't the truth. And it just didn't sit right with me telling people that. But the other extreme of that was telling them the other thing. And I didn't know what that other thing was. And it wasn't until I got into high school where I finally started to say it, like speak about it, like at that point in time, like being bisexual, and nobody took it seriously. It was just like oh, because we all went to the same elementary school, same middle school, same high school. And they're like, you've been straight all your life. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's just play. It's just, not taking it seriously. And it's like now I am 20 years old. Can't believe I'm saying that. I'm 20 years old in Atlanta, Georgia with a girlfriend. And like even people back home, they're like, some of them, I've had them say things like, like, oh, you were like for real. Like, yeah, girl. Like, what did you think? Like, yeah, like I have a girlfriend, like it's through and through. And now I identify as a lesbian. But at this point, it's like, it's even funny now, like my parents being on extremely Christian at one point, and not found out was a mess in itself. But now, like, I've had my family invite me and my girlfriend back home to Virginia Beach. I'm from Virginia Beach. And the very religious grandmothers and everything, they've met my grandma. So it's like, it's altered my brain cells. Cause I had this idea that, they're highly religious, they're Christian. That's not going to change. Like this lifestyle that I choose, that in my family, I'm not going to be able to have both. And now I'm seeing it now, like that I'm having both. And I'm like, wow, like I didn't think that this was ever going to be possible. So that's just kind of a little background on me and my family situation, spiritual situation.
Thank you all so much for sharing. To echo so much of what you both have said, I think it's so interesting that we have these very religious backgrounds, that come from, this is what my grandparents did, this is what my parents did, and I'm just going to do the same thing because we don't have another possibility model. So my next question, would be, when you came into, or what was your first sight of realizing your gender, your sexual identity or expression, and how did that coincide with what you had been taught or what you'd seen, in your churches and your congregations, or heard within even your family structure? And I'll share that when I came out to my grandmother in 2016, whoo, that was a rough one. Like, my granny is like, that is my girl. And when she looked me in my face and said some very harmful, hateful things, I was like, but it's still me. Like, it's still your grandbaby. Like, what is happening here? But because of other preachers, other pastors who didn't take the Bible seriously in terms of how they engaged it with their congregations, they were taking it literally and providing harm more than hope for a generation of people. But it was a journey to, especially because I'd gone to seminary after I graduated from Spelman. And so I'm now having the language and the tools and the resources to like solidify my feelings, if that makes sense. Because sometimes when you're going against the grain or you're going against something of the norm, people are like, well, where did it say that at? And I need you to show me this, and I need you to prove to me that you're like not going to flip flop back to men now that you were, dating this woman. And I'm like, we don't even ask that to people who are dating, their opposite gender. So why all of a sudden is it now this thing of, well, we need to know if you're serious before we even entertain what you're saying? And so, but the church was my first site of recognizing my limitations, or what I thought my limitations were as a Black girl child in the United States, and being raised in the Midwest in a missionary Baptist church. That place was the place that taught me that I should have to cover my needs, because I don't want to be a stumbling block for, a deacon or another church brother. And it's like, why should that onus be on me as a 9 or 10-year-old? That has nothing. I can't help my needs. I can't help my growth. I can't help things that are happening to my body. But yet I was told and shown through action that there was innately something wrong with my body as a girl child in these religious spaces. So that was my first place. And because that was the first place of identity for me, it took a long time for me to get comfortable in the body that I feel like God created me to be. So I would love to hear from you all how that has played out for both of you.
I will say, my grandma's like, that's my girl, that's my best friend. That's like, and I guess my coming out story, I didn't come out to her first. Essentially, my first actually, like, I can say girlfriend was in high school. And it was a secret to my parents, like they thought we were friends, essentially. And I have also a pretty crazy mental health background. I'm diagnosed with depression, chronic anxiety, and bipolar 1 disorder. And I attempted suicide when I was 16. And my father, very Christian, very cutthroat police officer father, he goes through my phone and he finds out everything. And it was just kind of like, my mom knew, like I never had told my mom, because my mom's my best friend too. She's my best friend, my grandma. And my mom, I've always been able to confide in my mother without feeling like I was going to be judged or anything like that. But essentially when my dad found out, he found out my mother knew as well, and it caused a rift in the family and in their marriage specifically. They're still together to this day, but even then there are some still things where it's like my mother, she's very emotionally protective over me and my sister, and my dad's very disciplinarian, like this is how things go. And when he found out, it was that same sentiment, like, oh, you're not gonna do that. Like you can do that when you get out of my house. And it was like, of course, like because of the intensity of my mental health situation, there were like locks on doors, it was checking phones, it was very crazy in my house. So it was like, oh, you're not gonna text that girl, you're not gonna see that girl, you know what I'm saying? And that's how that ended essentially, because it was just like they were like, oh, they the reason behind my suicide attempt was more family based, but my dad could not wrap his head around that and put it on the girl. And was like, you don't try to hurt yourself because of other people. Things happen, and this doesn't even make any sense. He was just having a very hard time. And now that I'm older, I can understand that as a father, that it was probably more of a struggle within himself and feeling like he failed his child than really putting like logically what was going on in the situation, and realizing that the way that he was acting was extremely harmful to me, my mother, and my sister. Um, like I said, now to this day, like I had other girlfriends by then, but it was pretty much in secrecy. Like I had a group in a very strict household, and I'm a firm believer in the fact that you being extra strict does not stop your children from doing stuff. They're gonna find a way. And so essentially that is how that started. And when I was having a lot of family problems, my family stopped going to church as well. But I also, at the time when they had stopped going to church, I was dealing with very negative experiences from my very Christian father and very Christian his mother and all this other stuff. So my straying away from my spirituality and my religion went hand in hand with this negative rhetoric that I was getting from Black Christian people about gay people and how I'm not supposed to be gay. And it made me not want to go back. Like, it made me want to just kind of like, I'm cool. Like, I don't even dance anymore. Like, it's all right. Like, my grandma, she didn't force me to, my grandma never forces me to do anything. And I had just kind of got into other hobbies that I feel like distract myself at the time. And now I'm a junior and I've only been to like 2 Sisters Chapel services in my 3 years of being here. And I'm like just now, like as in within the last month, trying to kind of figure out what that looks like for me, because I strayed away from it and I really didn't want. And even now, like I'll hear stuff like different like Christian comments and everything, and like I'll feel it in my brain, like get the ick, and I'm like, just slow down, like just hold on, like you have to take it slow. And I felt bad about that because I'm like, I know, like I know that there's a higher power. I know that I do believe in a God, but going to church, a lot of the practice, a lot of it, it's a lot of hypocrisy in a lot of the things, and it didn't make sense to me. Like, if I don't understand something, I just don't really want to be a part of. So I'm like, they're telling me that I can't do this, but they're doing this, and I'm being talked down and looked upon by my family members, but I'm a straight A student. I got to 20 schools. Like, I was doing so good, but I was still receiving so much backlash for choices that, to be honest with you, are not mine. My sexuality is not my choice. It's just kind of how things work. So I'm still now trying to figure out, like, what does my faith, what does my relationship with God even look like? Like, currently to this day, like, it is a consistent argument and battle I'm trying to figure out. So yeah.
First, I want to affirm you in everything that you said. Like, it is so valid. And I think that just you sharing that is just a testament to not just people who may be on the Zoom call, but so many stories of other people who who do not even have the ability, or not even necessarily don't have the ability, but wasn't given the space to even kind of figure out who they are from themselves. And for me, mine is a similar story. Like I said, I grew up in the church, and for me, limitations was put on me before I can realize that there were other possibilities. Like, I was put in a box, and this is what it is, and these are the rules, and this is how you live your life. And because of that, I never even if another possibility was in my face, I wouldn't recognize it as a possibility because such a strong barrier was put in my eyes, was put over my life. So honestly, in kindergarten, I knew. In kindergarten, I knew because I remember this. I mean, I remember this well. I was in Brooklyn, New York, in school. It was got to be about 10 o'clock a.m. And I went to the bathroom. My friend came in the bathroom and we kissed. Like we kissed in the bathroom. And I knew, like, someone was like, I like this. It makes me feel good. But I didn't know, like, oh yeah, you're gonna grow up and you're gonna be part of the community. Like, that's just how it is. But I didn't know that. And even then I knew, not necessarily that it was wrong, but it was like, this is something new for me. But because I don't know what it is, and because I was never given the language to identify it as anything, I was just, okay, whatever. And I went back to class and that was it. And then later in life, probably like maybe middle school, when I was getting into high school, I had what we would call now a situationship. Wasn't a full relationship. But there was a girl that I liked, and we was kicking it. But again, it's like when I got home, it was, I gotta clean it up. Like, there can be no slip up of, mom, I was talking to this girl, and there could be none of that. So that is probably truly when I started curating this mask of who Day Day is, or who Shadavia is. And like, okay, when I get into the spaces with my mom, when I get into spaces with my dad, church, family, it's always going to be, I am straight. And that's just that. And then I got to college and that became harder. Because now I'm in a space where I'm by myself, and I only have to go home if I want to 2 times for long breaks. And so I came here and I started figuring out, who is Day Day really? Who is Shadavia really? Without mom and dad and grandma's theology. Like, who am I? Who do I know myself to be? Who do I want myself to be? And when I started figuring that out, it was, at the time, I feel like was a lot more damaging than just being who I truly am. Because when I got on that plane to go home, there was immediate, got to put the mask back on. Like in Atlanta, I can do this transformational work. But when I get home to South Carolina, you best put that back on. We're not gonna do no conversation about LGBT, nothing, no rainbows, no nothing. And for me, it was like there was a final strike when I got home. I'm a creative, so like I do spoken word. I love painting, I love drawing, that kind of thing. And so I had made these like Spelman sneakers, and on one of the sides, I had a rainbow. I had painted a rainbow on one of the sides of the sneakers, and my mom found it. And I wasn't trying to hide it, because at this point I'm like, I'm doing the work. I'm in my journey. But I didn't think that she would automatically go to, my child is quote unquote not of God. But that's the first thing that she went to. And in my head, I'm like, all right, well, as a Christian, you so call yourself, the first place you go to, and this was, now that I think of it again, that internalized homophobia was like, that's the first place you go to is the LGBTQIA plus flag, and not talking about Jesus. And I was like, well, why? And like very defensive, like, why would you think that I'm straight? Like, I'm not gay. Da, da, da. And then I went back in my room. I was like, we still got a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do. And now I'm at a place where if my mom asks, I'm not going to deny it. But also, if she doesn't ask, I'm not going to bring it up. Just because for me, coming out is a scam. I don't believe in coming out. Straight people don't have to come out, so I don't have to either. And also, that is a very sacred part of my life, because it is my life. And because you have not gotten to a place where I feel safe with you in that capacity, I don't have to share any information with you that I don't have to. So, yeah, also, I feel like this would be a great time to tell a quick story. When I got to Spelman, again, like very oppressive theology, very oppressive stuff. But that is when I met RW, Reverend Whitney, and I thought I saw a ring on her finger. And I was like, again, in this very heteronormative mindset, like everybody who is a woman likes men, and everybody who is a man likes women. And I didn't know nothing about a no binary or anything like that. Like, I had no idea what this vocabulary was or how to properly identify people outside of heteronormative norms. So when I seen that she had a ring, I was like, oh, she's such an amazing person. I can't wait to meet her husband. Came to my surprise that there was no husband anywhere. Husband, where are you? You just don't exist. And so when I found that out, very quietly in my head, I sent her and every other homosexual to hell. Like, they were gonna burn. There was just like, that's it. They can live the lifestyle that they want to live, but as soon as Jesus gets back on this earth, they was gonna go to the deepest pits. And I truly did believe that. Like, I truly did believe that. And it wasn't, and she still didn't know this. It wasn't until last semester that I wanted to have an interview with RW, and I told her, and she was like, "Come, say what? Come again?" like what? Like this is how you felt? And I was like, and I was surprised by my own words. I was like, yeah, that is how I felt. But again, like, that is just a testament to my journey. Shout out to being a wisdom scholar. Like, that experience, and the Sister Chapel experience, and the Spelman experience, and the HBCU experience just show me that there is not one way to be Black. There is not one way to be lesbian. There's not one way to be bisexual. There's not one way to be a Christian. There's not one way to believe in faith. There's not one way to believe in religion. Like, there is not one way to God, or a God or a divine being that you believe in. There is just not one way to that. And so, yeah, that's a testament to where I came in 2021 to now being a graduating senior. Wow, that feels like so crazy to say, but yeah.
Thank you both for your vulnerability. Yeah, when she interviewed me for her paper, I was just, answering questions, going on. Had no idea. She was a junior by this point. And I literally had no idea that she had been raised in a very similar way as me, but came away from it thinking very differently than I did. Like for me, I came out of that kind of church background with the notion of I never want anybody to feel like I've had to feel. I never want anybody to feel like they're not seen. I never want anybody to feel like they have to hide parts of themselves because I literally know what it feels like to have to mask yourself based on the context that you're going in. And so I am somebody who doesn't like for my foods to touch. I am one of those girlies. Like, please don't have my green juice sliding over to my macaroni and cheese, and don't have my potato salad next to some black eyed. Like, gag. No. I lived my life as a sectional Thanksgiving plate. Like everything had to be here, here, here. Like the things cannot touch because if they touch, it's gonna make me sick. Like I can't eat it. Ugh. Now I've come to realize that I have some sensory issues that I am working through, like texture sensory things. Shout out to Supernova Tasha, our Spelman sister, who is doing great work on neurodivergence for Black folks. I didn't know the sensory related things could change so much for me, but yes, that's why I don't like my foods to touch. But at any rate, because I was living my life in that same capacity, it was literally making me sick. I mean, I was a first year, first year my master's program at Emory, and I've been going to student health services almost every 2 weeks. And this is a very like transparent conversation that we're having. I had my cycle at the top of January, and then like 2.5 weeks later, not just spotting, like another full on cycle. And anybody who menstruates knows that like your period is not a time of like, oh, let me get all of the things accomplished in the world, because you literally have no energy. And that became a cycle from like January to the top of April. So my body was in constant like distress because I was trying to format it into this very rigid cookie cutter way. And it was like, girl, no. And it wasn't until student health services, by this point, they had poked, prodded, drawn every sample possible, and everything came back normal. There was nothing they could find wrong with me. And the nurse practitioner, Molly, I'll never forget her name. That white woman said to me, Whitney, I don't think there's anything else that we can do for you here. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I need an answer. And she said, I think you should go and see student health services for psych. That was like, but why? Like, why? I get there, I do my intake, and it's a Black woman who does my intake, and she lets me know that I am in crisis, like dire crisis. And because the semester was about to end at Emory, I needed to be seen over the summer. Like I couldn't wait until we started school back in the fall. And I was like, well, what's wrong? Like I feel fine. Like I'm not that stressed. And I got to my first session, and this is the therapist I still have to this day. We are 10 years in. And I started seeing her multiple times a month because I was in crisis trying to live inauthentically. It was literally killing me, like making me ill. And so I say that to say, if you haven't come to Sisters Chapel, you do have 2 Sundays left, the 17th and the 24th, and I will be preaching this Sunday. If you watch Agatha All Along, I invite you to come because we're going to have a little convo about going down the road, down the richest road. Like, we're just going to have us a little chit chat, a little conversation. But if you haven't had a chance to come to Sisters Chapel, I would like to read our welcome statement that we say every Sunday, because my next question to Nyla and Day Day is about tools that you wish you had when you were growing up. And if I grew up in a religious space like Sisters Chapel, where I heard this welcome every Sunday, I feel like there are parts of me that would be healed by now, or, you know, feeling like, oh, it doesn't still rub me some kind of way. So we say, we want to affirm that this is a safe space where people of all shades of Black, sexual orientations, gender identities and expressions, body shapes and sizes, ages, and all points along the spectrum of physical, mental, and emotional health and well being are welcome. The body of Christ is now whole and complete because you are here. You are free to worship in whatever way feels right to you, whether that's through singing, crying, laughing, dancing, or simply opening your heart to receive God's presence. If I would have heard that like in high school, whoa, the reshaping and the reconstruction of how I saw myself would have begun so much earlier. Um, so what are some tools that you all wish your faith communities, your spiritual backgrounds would have provided you, or you even knew about when you were younger?
For sure, a welcoming like that would have been nice. Definitely. I never experienced any outward homophobia at my church. It was more so in my family by the heavy church goers, and I think that's kind of where my disconnect ended up. I feel like if they had that welcome as well, and maybe
Mm,
that perspective, and then came into my childhood, adolescent life, to only speak love, and when they speak of God, to only speak of love, that would have made a significant difference. Because I had, like, when I moved out here to go to school, knowing lesbian and all, I literally have told multiple people, friends, like back home, like, oh, like the way I'm gonna like cut my family off, I'm just gonna send them like my wedding invitation. It's gonna be me and my girlfriend kissing on kissing on the front at a wedding invitation, and that
okay.
cut me off, and like that'll be it. Like, excuse the car, they all out. But that's gonna be it. Like, cause I had such a,
Yeah.
and I still, I'm not gonna say I still have a bad relationship with my family. We working on it, we trying. But like my relationship with them was so, like when I moved, that was a big part of why I moved out here anyway. Like I got into 20 schools. I could have went to school in Virginia. There are HBCUs in Virginia. I wanted to get as far away from
Way.
as I could. And even now, loving Spelman, loving the community, I feel like a lot of my decisions were not sound. And my decisions to go to school and everything, like for so many different reasons, because I was so focused on like getting away from this toxic
Yeah.
household and these toxic Christian grandparents, and they're so mean, they hate me, and like they, how you say, like you're very like defensive and combative. Like I had to do that, and like it created such an angry version of myself. Like I was such an angry teenager, like so mad, like at everybody, like nobody can, like, and eventually it manifests in like can't nobody tell me nothing. So my teachers are like, hey, like you want to consider going in state, it might be a little less expensive. I'm like, no, what do I need that for? I'm gonna get a loan, I'm gonna
Yeah.
do that. And now I'm suffering for it now, some of those decisions. Even though, like I said, I love Spelman, I feel like speaking love into children is important, period, like in every aspect. But I just feel like if that would have been like the foundation of a lot of the relationships that my family members had with their family members and themselves, then it would have helped a lot. When we did National Coming Out Week, when and Bessie Strong, when you had the library of like the books, I didn't even know that existed until that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
there's so much about like queer theology. Like there's so many things, like, and everybody's been saying the same thing to me, like your relationship with God is your relationship with God. But I never heard it like I heard it like recently in another class. I'm taking Intro to Women's Studies right now with Professor Haley. And I was talking to them about it because we reading bell hooks and all of that. And she said it like when we were kind of talking about picking up a book, and when we were talking about it, she's yep, yep. She's like, nobody can tell you what your relationship with God is. It clicked. Like everybody's been saying it. They've been saying this exact same thing. Your relationship with God is yours and yours. Or they've been saying it every single time I've even talked about Christianity. I'm 20 years old, for 20 years of my life, but I never realized that it could look like this. I'm like, oh, your relationship with God means like, oh, some of y'all pray with y'all eyes closed, and some of y'all just talk, like, or some of y'all go to church every other Sunday, some of y'all go like, that's what I'm thinking, like very boxed, like I like kind of identity of what exactly it means to be Christian, to be Black, to be Christian, Black and gay, like what that looks like. And now I'm seeing it in ways that I could have never imagined, from queer theology books to literally, Reverend Bond, you're literally gay. Like you have, like you're married to a woman. Like I've never ever seen that in my life. I have never had a woman pastor or had a woman pastor or anyone that was a part of the church that was, not that I know of at least, like I've never seen that. So coming to Spelman, and even that's why, like I said, I was so reluctant to go to Sister Chapels. I'm like, Spelman's a Christian school. I'm like, not trying to hear that. I don't have time for that. But even meeting you, and when we were talking about National Coming Out, we can like, oh, she's queer. And I'm like, what? Like, she's reverend and she's queer. Like, they can exist together. And I'm 20 years old, 20 years living. I've never seen that before. So like that altered my entire, realized like your relationship with God is literally like your relationship. Like it's yours. Like I'm like, there's a, like, if your God is gay, like your God is gay. If your God's a woman, your God's like, if that's what you want it to be, that's what it can be. And nobody can tell you otherwise. Because I'm like, oh, if I'm going to go to church, I got to do this. I got to be like this. I just felt like that wasn't me. So I wasn't going to be able to have a spiritual part of myself. And now I'm seeing that that's not at all how it works. And it's and it's welcoming and it's accepting and it's good and it feels good. So it's like, if I feel like people operated from a place of love and making sure that children specifically understand it, like no matter what you decide to do, because I have gay male family members who are very much still closeted, not with me, but it's like because they're just so afraid and the family is so homophobic. And it's just like, I wish that these same cousins that we grew up going to church together, like that they operated when they discussed and when they had a relationship with us from a place of love. Like no matter what you do, like you're still my nephew, you're still my niece, you're still my daughter. Like that was what it was, period. And my grandmother is very much that, but my grandmother also practices Buddhism. So I had that part of my spiritual, and that's very much a very love religion. And that's why I've never been scared to tell my grandma anything, because she's like, you still my grandbaby. I don't really care. Like that's what it is. And like that's my girl to this day. Because gay, suicidal, with mental health issues, dealing whatever I was dealing with, like it was just like, you're like, okay, well, this is what it is. And she was just very relaxed about it. And I was terrified to tell her. So I'm like, oh, she's elder. Like, she's gonna, and I don't mean to say like, you know what I'm saying, but she's elder. Like she's not gonna, she's like, no, it's cool. Like you're good. So it's just definitely, like I said, and I can't say it enough, like operating from a place of love when you deal with people first, like not operating from trying to be a parent. Like you should be a parent, but scolding and parenting and disciplinarian and making sure, and as a teacher you teach, and that's it. Like operating from a place of love with children, because then they can grow up. And like you said, I feel like I would have had this a little bit more figured out by now, maybe a little bit, if that was like my upbringing, for sure.
I just want to say that like having an ally, and I didn't have that language. Like I didn't know. I just knew I needed somebody on my side. Like I needed somebody to understand me, to have compassion, to have empathy. And for me, that was my Auntie Sherry. Like God rest her soul. When I tell you I was an adult and I'm just just scared. She went to bat, and when I say Auntie Sherry, she is not my biological auntie, but as Black people, we know we got aunties and we got cousins that we are not blood related to, but that's still your auntie and that's still your cousin. Okay. And so Auntie Sherry is actually my biological auntie's best friend, and she was classmates with my other auntie's younger sister. And so like that's my auntie. And so Auntie Sherry went to bat for me with her peers, like people who knew me from childhood, like they saw me grow up, but for some reason, as you just explained, Nyla, like there was this disconnect. There was a disassociation of like, that's still Whitney. Well, wait, what she mean? She called herself liking girls. You know what the people say. And Auntie Sherry was just like, this is still the same one that y'all be asking to pray. This is still the same one. Y'all be saying, oh, she's so smart. She's going here and doing that. This is still the same. Like she was the one. And I needed that because I couldn't go to her peers and have them hear it the same way. So I definitely echo and Ashe what you said, Nyla. I do want to make one note. We have 10 minutes left, so if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat box. And go ahead, Day Day.
I feel like for me, I wish. Well, let me say it like this. I feel like if I would have had a space where my questions were embraced and not shut down, that would have added a lot to where I could have been now, or I would have been now. Yeah, I feel like the questions that I had are not even necessarily like challenging questions, but just curious questions. Like as somebody who is, regardless of if I've been in this my whole life, like I'm still being newly introduced, especially at that age. I don't have the 30, 40 plus years that y'all have that are teaching me. I don't have that. So of course, naturally, if you're introduced to anything new, you're gonna have questions about it. Like, what's this? What does this mean? This doesn't mean this. Well, what does it mean? Like, I don't get how this comes together. And instead of saying, this is just how it is, and you just like you said, like, love on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, put me in a direction where, well, not put me in a direction that you would want me to go, but like just put me in a direction where like, okay, I understand your question. I hear your question. Let's work it out. Let's talk it out. I also, in the most selfish and non-selfish way, I wish that my parents specifically had the love that I get from my community now when they was younger. I think that especially like when we talk about faith and this the ideal of love and stuff, it's a very generational thing. So if love looks like to somebody, I'm gonna beat you, and nobody breaks that, it's just the whole lineage is gonna be, this is what love is, this is what love is, this is what love is. And then somebody else is gonna meet somebody else and be like, this is how I know love, so this is how I'm gonna show you that love. And now that person is gonna be like, okay, well, I guess that's what love is. And they're gonna have children, if they want to. And then that lineage is gonna, love is beating, love is beating. So I feel like because the love that my my grandparents showed to my parents, and that's not the love, that's not the emotional support or the physical support or the mental support that I need. And they was only shown one type of love. They showed that to me, and they automatically thought, this is gonna be enough for my daughter. And I have this conversation often with my mom. RW, me and my mom have come a long way. And there's still, whoo, look, if I could tell you where God has brought me from, okay? No, but yeah, I have a conversation with my mom all the time, and I tell her, like, you're a great mom. Like, I'm not taking that away from you at all. Like, you have truly, now that I know, you have done what you know to do. And because just how I feel, I didn't know that there's anything possible. You didn't know that there was anything else possible either. Because you was told that this is what being a mom looks like. And so you operated in that. And while I cannot, blame you entirely, yes, there's fault there, because this is still how I feel. I'm still was very left traumatized, but it's not like you knew that this was an option, you just decided to take this option. That's not how it is at all. That's not how it was at all. So I feel like, I was telling my mom, like, you're a great mom and you did all that you need to do. However, you did not hear me out and what my needs were and met that. So because you were given all you knew to give, what you knew to give was not all that I needed. It was not satisfactory to what I completely needed. So of course I was left with a gap that I had to go in and find my community, and grateful for this community. And also I wish I had that community from the jump, because then I would know that this is possible now. And now when I go into life, my standard is already here, instead of my standard being here. And then until I got to where I met my community, I wouldn't have had to go through all of the harmful theologies and putting myself through these things, because again, I was operating in a space where this is what love looks like. So this is the love that I deserve from other people. And that is not the love that I deserve from other people. So yeah, I feel like if I had the space to have these questions open, if I had the space, if my parents was loved on a little bit more, and their needs they felt like they didn't have to shut down, or because this is what mom, dad said, this is just what it is, I think that, it would have went a different way. But God be the glory that I'm breaking that generational curse. So yeah, that's how I think it would have been different for me.
Oh, thank y'all. I hate we only have 5 minutes left, but I do want to address one of the questions that I received. And while it is lengthy, I'm going to pull out one part that I believe most of us have heard preached or talked about, and that is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is in Genesis 19, I believe. And whenever somebody gives me that and says, that's how I know God despises homosexuality, I'm always like, I'm clear you actually didn't read that chapter. Like all you're showing me is that you really haven't read that chapter. Because if you have, let me back up and say, so when I was in seminary, you had to take a year of Old Testament. Like, this is not Bible study. This is not, okay, we're about to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and eat green cookies. It was not that. It was, we're going to look at these original languages. We're about to understand why they were written culturally for a subset of people and not for a collective people. And Sodom and Gomorrah is one of those terror texts. And so if you have the capacity to read Sodom and to read Genesis 19, I believe that's the chapter that it's in, to read it, it is actually not a chapter, or it's not God destroying these two cities because of homosexual activity. It's actually, there is such a high level of not caring for your neighbor right there in that text. And we also see Lot offering up his virginal daughters to be sexually assaulted, to be raped. Like, people skipped all over that, and then they're like, oh yeah, but God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because the men were sleeping with the men. That's why. And I'm like, oh, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. Yeah, I will allow Day Day and Nyla to both give us like one wrap up a piece to share with their Spelman siblings, to those on the call who may feel like, I know that I'm queer, I know that I'm gay, lesbian, however you want to define. And I know that God loves me, but I feel like I don't have space to discern, to question, to parse out. What would you say to them?
Really quickly, I'll say whatever you do, regardless if it's in faith, creativity, career, find yourself in it. And if you cannot find yourself in it, then it is obviously not for you. Especially like when you're reading sacred texts like the Bible, the Quran, and so forth, like insert yourself in the text. This is God speaking to you, and this is you speaking to God. That's one thing. And then also, like, especially things that prayer, communion, like, tailor it to who you are. Like, you do not have to be on your knees for 3 hours saying the Lord's Prayer over and over again. Like, that is not how I talk to God. I talk to God just like I talk to anybody else. Like, what's up, Big G? Like, today was not it. I don't know what you got going on, but I'm not messing with it. Like, you need to continue on. Like, anybody who knows me, I cuss like a sailor. I do. Like, when I talk to Big G, like, Big G is my brother. Like, Big G is my sister. Big G is like whoever I need God to be. God is that in that moment. That is who God is. So when I used to talk to my grandma, R.I.P. to her, rest in purple, I used to be like, yo, Ghana, like, what's going on? Like, you're wilding out right now. Or like, I need you right now. Like, where you at? And that's how I talk to God. Like, I don't talk to God like how my mom talks to God. That's just not a relationship that I can cultivate for myself. I can't operate in that. So whenever you feel like, dang, it's just feeling like I'm not feeling that connection, it's probably because you're not feeling connected to yourself. So you should definitely like figure out, what do you need? Like, what are my needs? What does it look like for me? And that may very much look different, in your seasons look different from today to tomorrow, the next hour. Just be open to how you can receive God and how you can receive yourself. But yeah.
I want to echo everything you just said, Day Day. But the thing that really spoke to me the most is that if you're not connecting with it, it's probably not for you. Also understanding that there's always, be open to learning. As a Virgo sun and a perfectionist junkie, I wasn't like that for a long time. It was like, this is what it is. This is what I said, period. Like, this is how the Christians been. This is how they gonna be. I don't care about none of that. Like, be open to being wrong. You know what I'm saying? And not wrong in the sense that there's a correct way to do something, but wrong in like, maybe your interpretation wasn't what it was. Maybe what everybody else's interpretation is not what it's going to be for you. Like, and maybe what you've known is not what it's going to be. Like, things change, as we've seen. Like, everything changes all the time. And so being open to learning and discovering people yourself, really specifically yourself, which is going to be the answer to exactly what your spiritual journey looks like, is extremely important. And also not even just the other people in your life operating from a place of love, but make sure you're operating from a place of love yourself. I know, speaking, and I might just be projecting, but I know I'm extremely hard on myself and what should be and what shouldn't be and what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing, and this is what it's supposed to look like, which is not operating from a place of love when talking to and treating myself. And I feel like I've definitely put more harmful measures on myself than other people have at this point in my life, because I've been so harmful as to what, okay, well, if you're not doing this, then you didn't go to church this Sunday. Oh my God, what are you doing? Like, very talking, operate from a place of love. I can say it like everybody else has been saying and been telling me all my life, and I'm just now getting it. Your relationship with God is yours, or whatever your divine higher power is going to be. Nobody can tell you what you're doing is incorrect or any of that. Because at the end of the day, like, it's you, like, they're not you. So like, Day, like you said, the way mom talked to God is not the way I talk to God. I cuss, like I said, too. I cuss. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry. Like, that's how I'd be like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. I'm just really upset right now. And like, that's how I talk. Like, same way I talk to my mom, I cuss to my mom. I'm like, I don't mean to cuss. I'm sorry. Like, I do the same thing. So operate from a place of love within yourself. If you are actively attempting to love yourself, like you already do, so just make sure that you put that at the forefront of everything you do: career, creative, professional, spiritual, it doesn't matter. Just operate from a place of love. Be patient with yourself. Be kind to yourself. And you could always reach out to me or Data or Reverend Bond. Like, if you need anything to tell me your story, I love to talk. We can talk all day. It doesn't matter. If you need a friend, a shoulder to cry on, please do not hesitate to reach out. I promise you.
And the only thing I will say is find your tribe, find your community. This is not work that can be done in silo. If you would like some textbook resources, feel free. I will put my email in the chat to just email and say, hey, I was on the Bridging the Gap conversation. And I would just like to get the list. I brought some of them with me, but I'm looking at them and realize, like, I got like 16 or 18 books with me, and I'm pretty sure I have another 16 or 18 at home. But if you would like just a list of book resources to help you, you know, figure out what this is. And the other thing I would like to leave you with is many of us also grew up hearing, you don't question God, you just accept what God does and you just do that. I don't believe, and I know we got to go, but I also believe that church is one of the places where we unintentionally teach that consent doesn't matter. And that's why we have such a high rate of sexual assault, because women are taught that, oh, people can just do whatever, to you, and it doesn't matter, because that's how we say that God also operates. Like, we're just God's little puppets, and that's not the case. So feel free to question God, to say, like, girl, bruh, I don't know what's going on. Like, can you give me some type of something? God can handle our questions. I don't understand why people think that God is like scared of us. Like, if we believe that God is all powerful, God can handle my question. God can handle, like, this ain't making sense to me. Can I get something else? So yeah, that's what I have to offer. I'm so grateful to Day Day and Nyla and Afrekete, and Sisters Chapel for joining us for this conversation. Yes, my email is there. I think Day Day meant to put this in so I'm just going to copy it right quick. And this is for everyone. Oh, she already put it in there. Okay. Yes, and my Instagram is all things Whitney B. Yes, thank you all so much. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we will see you later. Bye.
Yes.